Hey there YouTube, I'm Yukitsu, this is the Yukitsu Times, welcome to my channel, welcome to a Tuesday tutorial. So today we're going to be talking about a weapon that I need to figure out how to use more often, and that's because I play as Canada, and Canada does not use these things. And that's infantry support weapons. Canada is one of those few decks that doesn't have a Phase A infantry support gun, and that includes on their vehicles. Now, there's plenty of decks in this game that don't have access to infantry-based infantry support guns, like the IG-18. Like, for example, every single allied deck in the game, they do not have access to any infantry-based support guns. So that's fine, and if you play as the allies, you're going to sort of notice that lack of them. Now, this is actually quite realistic. The Germans had access to these, and this is because they needed them. For the allies, having the ability to bring infantry support guns up to a position quickly using vehicle chassis was extremely valuable, but the Germans couldn't afford that luxury because their tank production wasn't high enough to just mount these things on tanks. Whereas for the Allies, tank production wasn't really a problem, so if they needed an infantry support gun into a place, they'd just wheel it up on a vehicle. For the Germans, they would have to haul it into place by hand because they didn't have access to that amount of industry. And this is also why you tend to see the infantry support guns for the Axis powers located on light vehicles when you do see them available on vehicles. Anytime that they had a tank chassis, they just needed to put an anti-tank weapon on that, because otherwise they'd be fucked. And to be honest, they did get fucked regardless, but, you know, whatever, that's how the cookie crumbles sometimes. So anyway, let's take a look at things. We've got our enemy with the IG-18 over here. He's using it kind of incorrectly. This isn't the tree line that I personally would have brought it to. I think that he can easily get it to this corner here and have it be available over there. Now, the Canadians don't have access to a Phase A infantry support gun, but that doesn't mean that they don't have access to an infantry support gun. The Canadians have access to the Priest WD in Phase B, and they can get actually 3 of them per stack. This is a very, very high-powered, extremely good infantry support gun. Now, strictly speaking, the Allies mostly relied on their light tanks and their tanks for the infantry support gun role. If you looked at Doctrine, what they would actually do is just have the Sherman fit that role. It was a tank with a 75mm high explosive that was capable of perfectly just walking up to an opponent and doing what had to be done. If you were to compare this, the Germans didn't really use the Panzer IV in the same way. The Panzer IV was expected to find and engage tanks, and part of this was just due to the American doctrine and the British doctrine. The British just classically categorized tanks as being primarily infantry support weapons, whereas the Germans viewed it as sort of being a spearhead element on its own. The Americans also did not think that tanks should be engaging other tanks. Their doctrine was, generally speaking, a preference towards being able to use tank destroyers, dedicated tank destroyers, to destroy enemy tanks, and anti-tank guns to destroy enemy tanks, rather than trying to engage them in tank-on-tank fights, because they knew that the Sherman was at a disadvantage against things like, say, the Tiger or the Panther. Either of those would be able to defeat an American tank emplacement. So that's just sort of the doctrine that both sides went with. Now, you can see that my opponent has got actually a good corridor that he could be using for an infantry support gun. If he had one back here, in this corner here, he'd be able to provide tons of fire down this corridor, and this would be extremely effective. Now, why is it that these things are so good other than the fact that they've got 1,000 range and decent high explosive power? Well, strangely enough, this is one of those few weapons in this game that actually is capable of killing units. Most units in this game simply suppress units and simply cause units to basically cause units to get pinned down and just sort of stay falling back for like forever. By contrast, though, an infantry support gun, if it gets its hands on an enemy infantry unit, is able to deal huge amounts of casualties. And the fact that it's able to do that is just such a unique element to them that makes them very, very difficult to replace. Because they're able to quickly kill units as well, they're very, very good for dealing damage to enemy anti-tank positions if you're worried about them popping out, killing a tank, and then sort of backing away. Typically speaking, they'll be able to fire off a shot and get that killed. Now, you can see that this IG-18 here has been used poorly. It got pinned down by my aircraft and now is getting killed by the Humber Mark III. He should have been able to fall it back, though. The infantry ones have a pretty good advantage in that they're able to hide in this sort of terrain there and stop enemy units from seeing them. That's able to make them much more effective in a fight in this sort of context, because if a tank has to be here out in front, I can simply wheel an anti-tank gun up, pop it with a first shot, hopefully, get lucky and pop with that first shot, and then back my anti-tank gun out of line of sight. That doesn't work against the infantry version, obviously. Especially because I can't even use an anti-tank gun against it, but like even if I could see it somehow, I wouldn't be able to do any damage to it that way. So here we are, sort of doing our thing. One of the infantry support guns actually takes out the Humber Mark III over there, so there is a chance that they can actually be used in that anti-tank role, but it took them so many shots to kill Humber that it's really not worth it trying to use them for that role. And you can see at this point in time, my opponent has actually got like quite a decent buildup of IG-18s, and this is preventing me from moving up across a fairly broad area. But he's using them defensively in a situation where he could be pushing them up a little bit more. He's using the flak barreling where I would have actually used an IG-18 instead, and I actually would have had the IG-18 back here where the flak barreling is. The flak barreling is able to deal the suppression damage to this rifle unit. You can see that I've got this rifle unit suppressed here. But it's not causing casualties. He's able to fire at them for quite some time, but it's not really doing a whole lot. This IG-18 firing across here is able to actually pin down this unit of rifles, even though they're in a building under green cover. It's able to actually deal quite a lot of damage, and these units are going to end up panicking and getting knocked out of the fight pretty quickly as a result of all this. You can see some shots heading out in various different spots here from this SMG-42. A lot of units sort of panicking. He's able to pin down this unit of rifles continually with this long-range shot from that IG-18. It's not really great for me to be fighting that sort of situation there, but IG-18 is going to move a little bit too close to the recce, and strangely enough, that recce scout can actually kill an IG-18 if it's at close range. It's just that no one ever puts their IG-18 that close to a recce normally, so my opponent not necessarily the greatest, but that's fine. Able to push forward a little bit with the 6-pounder. My opponent gets really lucky with all his mortar shots and keeps taking out all my 6-pounders, but again, IG-18 out in the open isn't really all that great. I'm able to pin down yet another one of these guys, and then we're able to sort of walk up to it with a recce and kill it since it's pinned down. Got this unit of rifles keeping it pinned down as well, and yeah, these guys actually have fairly credible firepower at short range, so able to use those Sten guns to good use. At this point, my opponent's sort of pushing forward with the Fusilier. I think he actually takes out both my Stormtroopers and my rifles somehow with the Fusiliers, but it's probably from the stupid GRW 120mm. He gets work done with that stupid thing. Either way, though, actually, maybe he brings in some Pioneers here. I can't really remember. He's bringing, like, so many Opal Blitzes full of infantry that I just can't remember what happens in this particular spot, especially since I'm focusing elsewhere. Pushing forward with these Kangaroos, and we've got, like, this 6-pounder coming in. His Panzer 35R is just sort of forced to focus on the 6-pounder, but the 6-pounder obviously going to kill that, and then that's going to let us push forward with the Kangaroos, get him out of there. So at this point in time, we've got like this Kangaroo doing this sort of fighting down this corridor here in a way that it's not really meant to, but it is able to put down this flak railing. And the thing about IG-18s is that they're extremely susceptible to anti-enemy aircraft, so he's going to need to do something to protect this against a bomber run. And that is, in fact, what is going to end up killing this guy. Panzer 35R is actually not really that good at killing Kangaroos. Kangaroos are one of like most heavily armored carriers in the game, so it's going to do fine here. This time I actually remember to relocate my 6-pounder, but I think he one-shots it anyway. Like, I'm not even sure what has line of sight to it, but I'm pretty sure he kills it with this mortar. Yeah, so look at all this freaking infantry that comes in to just murder the crap out of my troops here, Stormtrooper and rifles. So they go down from all these Ursat's troop and this Fusiliers over here. I don't know how this Fusiliers survive against the Stormtroopers, though. Either way, Sherman walks up, able to pin down and kill some Pioneers. Rifles are firing away at these Pioneers as well. And you can see that high explosive shell from the Sherman is actually able to deal some damage as well, getting kills instead of just damage out there. Saab trooping, though. Coming in, these guys very, very, very good at close-range combat. Not as good as the Canadians, Stormtroopers, but still similar but my opponent should actually be pushing forward with the Panzer 35R, try and kill this thing here, because it's what's keeping me in this fight over here. But whatever, you know, it happens. Fusiliers are sort of like one of those are really ridiculous for scouts. Like, they should not be as good as they are. Sort of pushing forward with like command carrier and a couple Kangaroos, just dealing a lot of damage here. And at this point in time, we've actually managed to bomb out that infantry support gun. You can see that like the main problem here was the flak railing was in the open, was able to get pinned down by my other units, allowing me to take it out with an aircraft. That leaves them extremely vulnerable. So at this point in time, we finally see my priest double D. I should be using these in more games, but you can see that it's able to sort of wind up a shot there, and out it goes, and actually kills an Ostroop in there with just one member of the squad with a miss. You can see that it fired way to the far back and to the left there. And another shot there, kills another one of them, and again lands its shot behind them. These guys have green cover, the people I'm firing at, but still. That one, again, very, very far to the left, but still misses, still causes a kill. And we're going to see yet another shot here, finish off the squad. And then we're going to push forward, start firing at that flak railing. I think we actually take it out with the, somehow we take it out with the Wolverine. I'm not really sure how that happened, because Wolverine has, like, a 1 for its high explosive value and, like, no AoE. It's got, like, 3. Okay, whatever. But, yeah, so these things not very good infantry support guns. At this point in time, I've got this sort of long corridor that I can fire through with these infantry support guns and these anti-tank guns. So it's going to be a lot harder for him to fight this sort of area here in this little build-up. So I can actually start moving troops much more safely into this area. They help secure these sort of areas very effectively. Opponent bringing a Panther 35RF up to this area. We still have a 6-pounder up here, though, so we're able to sort of defend a little bit. Sub-troopin's coming in through there. He's got this ersatz troop in there, going to actually kill my rifle leader, and then Panic can kill my rifles. The rifles are actually going to get killed more by the 120mm howitzer there, or mortar there, but that's sort of the way of things. I think that my Sherman actually managed to get killed by a Panzerjäger 35R, which is rare. Panzerjägers are shit, so that's kind of fun, but coming in with another Sherman over here, and again, really capable and willing to engage with enemy infantry. I should actually be moving my infantry support gun up and the Wolverine up to here-ish, because either of those would work quite well. You can see again that high explosive shell instantly chopped that unit from 9 to 4, forcing it to fall back, of course, as well. Another shot coming in from the high explosive, killing another one of them. So it's just a difference in killing power. This is what makes these infantry support guns and these high explosive guns so much better than just using machine guns, because machine guns are very good at suppressing units and denying an area to infantry. They're not that good at actually killing units. Like, I wouldn't be able to kill a unit if I had a machine gun that could fire this far, which obviously doesn't exist, but another shot out that long distance there, and also quite a lot of panic as well. Quite a lot of suppression from these high explosive weapons. Generally speaking, anything that fires explosive shells in this game rather than bullets is just a superior weapon. All around, in terms of both, like, causing lots of suppression, causing kills, just everything. I can see, like, the Wolverine and the Priest opening up on units that are sort of down this road here. Can't see them anymore because their unit that was spawning died, which is really unfortunate. I do need to get spotters up here, but that's one thing about these guys. Unless you can get line of sight, they're pretty useless. Now that the Sherman's sort of opened up with the machine guns at close range, the ersatz troop are just basically screwed. Able to kill a Panzerjäger as well, so tank's nice and versatile here. Either way, though. Yeah, lots of random bullshit happening here. Sub troop running up against some Assault Pioneers. I think Assault Pioneers actually can beat these guys. I think we lose this 6-pounder again. I really hate this guy's luck with the GR-120s. Generally speaking, I find these things don't actually cause that many kills, but his just one-shots my 6-pounders. Like, the high explosive value on this is high enough, I suppose, that if you land a direct hit, it's just landing a direct hit is supposed to be so rare that it shouldn't be happening as frequently as it does. I wonder if I actually run into these stormtroops. Yeah, it's pinned down, and I'm pretty sure the next shot just kills it. Oh, no. Okay, well, interesting. Over here, we lose one of our carriers. And able to deal quite a lot of damage to this Fusilier unit, so that's pretty good. And at this point in time, my opponent sort of leaves the game there. So, didn't really get to see a whole ton of use out of them, but my opponent was sort of using them incorrectly. But I feel like I was using it correctly enough, like denying a huge corridor where my opponent couldn't move troops through. Especially the roads and other open areas like that, long straight areas. I think that I need to start using them more often, getting more acclimatized to them, especially for dealing with enemy infantry support guns, especially the IG-18s. A good counter to them is something like a Priest. If you got like 1 or 2 Priests and just sort of move forward with a couple of Kangaroos or something like that, and an enemy pops up with an enemy anti-tank gun, your Priest and your other Kangaroo will easily be able to take out that anti-tank gun. probably kill it rather than just denying it its firing rate by pinning it down. And once it's actually killed, it can't come back and just harass you again like it would if I killed it with a machine gun. So anyway, that's our quick look at the infantry support weapons. I think that they're extremely useful for actually finishing off infantry units instead of just panicking them, and being able to kill units is ultimately what matters in this game, a lot more so than being able to pin down units. So the fact that it's able to do so quickly and efficiently rather than, say, a machine gun, which can sort of eventually kill a unit, but more likely is just going to leave them pinned down for hours and hours on end until you can sort of rush a unit forward and potentially capture them. They're just a vastly superior option in that particular context. Their long range as well makes them very, very suited to assaults because you can sort of have them further back in a safe area and then just sort of push forward with your infantry. If your infantry come under enemy fire, those infantry support guns easily can take out anything that's trying to stop your infantry. Then your infantry can just sort of walk forward freely while your infantry support guns are taking those targets out. And since your units are likely to just be suppressed by enemy fire as they're advancing and not taking any actual damage, you can just wait till the morale sort of recovers, have your infantry support guns kill the targets, and then have your infantry move forward after they've recovered their morale. So I think that they're a very, very effective weapon. I need to use them more. I do use them when I'm playing as the Axis in particular. I like using the SDKFZ mounted ones because they're so cheap. 35 points for an effective anti-infantry weapon that's capable of taking out anti-tank guns and anti-tank gun positions extremely quickly and extremely effectively. Just makes it so that the Axis can sort of push through an area much, much more effectively than the Allies can. And like, part of the problem is that I play as the Canadians, and the Canadians just have no infantry support guns in Phase A. Some of the other Allied factions do have access to infantry support guns in Phase A. For example, we can take a look at the 6th Airborne. They've got access to the Tetrarch CS, and the Tetrarch CS is actually a fairly decent infantry support weapon there. Very high AoE on this one with a good range on that high explosive shell there. A little bit better overall at taking out infantry, I would say, than the SDKFZ, but they are quite a lot more expensive. You've also got some of the factions able to bring in a Cromwell 6 at Phase A. These things have huge AoE and huge HE value, decent accuracy. Able to bring these in Phase A is going to let you sort of smash through enemy positions quite well, but they're very expensive, 110 points. You could basically get 3 of the enemy SDKFZs for the price of one of these guys. And 3 SDKFZs is actually probably better at taking an anti-tank gun position, other than the fact that this has the 1200 range. So if you're able to power this up with a couple of the, let's say you could pair it up with a couple, I don't know, Willis MMGs here. Like, let's say that you paired it with 3 Willis MMGs. These things can rush forward towards the enemy anti-tank emplacement, and the Cromwell 6 can start firing anti-tank shells at it from that longer range. And he can't even micro to fire at the Cromwell 6 because the Cromwell 6 is at 1200 range away, and most Phase A anti-tank guns have 1000 range. So this would be able to lob those shells at it, probably like pinning it in 1 or 2 shots, allowing you to either kill it with the Willis MMGs or pin it down with the Willis MMGs and then kill it with the Cromwell, or whichever order it ends up happening in, because it's a lot of firepower, it's a lot of damage coming in against a relatively fragile unit. So yeah, that's just something I need to use a little bit more effectively and a little bit more often because of how useful they actually are. Anyway, hope you found this one enjoyable, and of course, as always, hope to see you guys all next time.